Well folks, we've been waiting long enough. Let's get our seeds started. And if you hang around to the end of the video, I'll show you how I make my automated Excel spreadsheet that'll calculate when to sow your seeds, when to transplant those out in the garden, and even when you can expect your first harvest. Let's get into it. Well, hello backyard vegetable gardeners. Welcome to the Backyard Vegetable Gardening channel. Today's February the 5th, 2024. And I sure hope you're having a great day. This video is part of our Beginner Gardener series, and today we're going to be talking about getting seeds started. So before we get into starting our seeds, there's a few things we need to be aware of. Before you just go out and start buying seeds, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what's going to grow good in my area? One of the easiest ways to figure that out is to see what your local farmers are growing. In my area, they grow a lot of corn, they grow a lot of soy, cabbage, strawberries, peaches, apples, a good number of things grow well in my area. But also you can ask other gardeners, what have they been growing, what do they grow successfully, what's been a challenge for them, and that's a good general rule of thumb. And the second thing is, go ahead and have you a spot picked out in your garden where you're going to plant these things before you grow a bunch of seedlings and you've got nowhere to put them. It's just a good idea, it's just prudent. That's the word we'll use, it's prudent. So once you've picked out the right variety of crops you're going to grow and you've got you a place to grow it, now we can start thinking about starting our seeds. First thing you're going to need is some trays to grow in, or some cups, however you want to do it. We've got two different varieties here. We've got some 32 cell trays made by Burpee Company and some 16 cell trays made by the Burpee Company. And we use these a lot. We use all kinds of things really, but we use these because they got this nice silicone bottom, and if you see, you just helps you to pop the plants out. And really, it's not a big deal if you don't use nothing like that. It's just what we use a lot of around here. So you got your trays. Of course, that's where we're going to fill with the pot medium, put our seeds in it. But we got this little watering tray, which is really nice thing to have because it allows you to water from the bottom. It's much healthier for your plants and contains the mess a whole lot easier indoors too. If you're outdoors starting this in a greenhouse, or maybe you're in a more temperate area, you can just do it in open air. You know, it's no big thing. Take your watering can or watering hose and just get water everywhere. But when you're starting your seeds indoors, that's probably not a good idea. So for many of you, this is more of what you're going to be starting with at home. So it's a little bitty seed starting tray. This one right here is a 40 cell tray. Find these at the local big box store. We got these off the internet. They're just a little bit thicker. It's what we used the first couple years of gardening. And one of the things you're going to need to go with something like this, and the watering tray, is a humidity dome, which would sound like that right there. It keeps humidity in. These Burpee trays don't have that. Humidity tray isn't a requirement, but it sure is good to have. It helps increase germination rates and all that stuff. But the next thing you're going to need is some starting medium, and we've got some already established right here. A little bit later in the video we'll show you how we made it. We don't purchase the commercial offerings. It's just a little bit more expensive, I find, and it's easy to make at home. So before we start our seeds, that's what we're going to do. And if you notice, you got to have something to put your seed starting medium in, especially if you're going to mix it yourself. Now I guess you could skip this step if you have the bags, but for me, you'll see when we start planting our seeds, you're going to need you a nice little tray, a tub like I got right here in front of me. It makes things a lot easier. Now as far as the basics, that's all you're going to need. You're going to need your seeds, some starting medium, and some germination trays. Other than that, there's some nice things that you can have, like heat mats. Those might help you. We're going to use some today for what we're growing. Watering can would help. This mixing tub, I highly recommend it, and a spray bottle to keep those seeds moist. And we start off making our seed starting medium using a brick of cocoa cord. Now you can use peat moss. We've used that for several years, but this year we're trying to go with the cocoa cord and had good results. You see it comes in a nice little brick, and all you need is some water And you just, takes about 3 liters from what I've gathered with these bricks. All right, folks, the cocoa core has finished expanding. We've got it broken up well. We've got it divided off here in this little area, if you'll notice. What I like to do is I like to get about 30% perlite into my seed starting mix. A lot of people will use vermiculite, and I'd say that's got its advantages, but I've got lots of perlite, so we're just going to use the perlite today. So you want 70% of the cocoa core or the peat moss, whichever you're using, about 30% of the perlite or the vermiculite, whichever one you're using. And one thing I will say about this cocoa core, this is the first year we're really using it. I like it because it's got a lot finer consistency than the peat does. With the peat, we're always having to pick out larger particles out for our seed starting. You know, when you put it in a planting hole, it don't really matter as much. But when you're trying to put it in them cups and them cells, it makes a big difference. So we're going to get our perlite to the table and we're going to mix it in. All right, folks, we've got a perlite. We're just going to start adding it to this little area we've cleared out here. And you can measure it by cups. You can go 7 parts peat or cocoa core and 3 parts perlite, whichever one you do. I'm just going to use this little eyeball method here where I've got the tray kind of divided up. I'm going to fill an equal depth in my little trough of the perlite. And one thing, if you haven't paid attention to the other videos, when you're working with this perlite or the vermiculite, both of them are very dusty. So if you're working with it a lot, you might want to use a mask. For me, I've just got a few scoops here. I'm not going to worry about it a lot. And the way I'm going to kind of counteract the dust is I'm going to take some scoops of the cocoa core and put it over there first. And that's how I'm going to start my mixing. Because you can see there's still a little bit of dust coming up, but it's all right. So now we're just going to take it, and if you've never worked with the perlite, it kind of feels like styrofoam. It's real light and goes everywhere if you're not careful. Just a good puff of wind will have it all over the place. So when you're working with it, you don't want to get too awful violent here. You just want to gently mix it together, kind of save your sinus cavities and your lungs a little bit of hardship. But as you can see, it's a really easy process to get a thorough mix. Just make sure you go to the bottom, work it all around, through and through, and then you have you a good seed starting medium that's far less expensive than what's commercially available in the stores. When it comes to your gardening, unless you just want to spend all your money on this stuff, it's nice that we can make this stuff ourselves, and that's what we've learned to do. It saves a lot of money. This little batch right here, because we buy the perlite in bulk, we buy the cocoa core in bulk. And when I say bulk, the perlite comes in 4 cubic foot bags, and we buy about 6 of those bags at a time, and just get them off the internet. Various suppliers, Amazon, we've even bought off Amazon. What is it called? The Greenhouse Megastore. Bought off several companies, but when it comes to this cocoa core, we just buy it. You know, I bought it for the first time. I didn't know how much this stuff was going to expand, so I just bought me 2 small cases of it, and the cases aren't very large and very economical. And so I would probably have at least $20 in this amount of seed starting medium if I went to the store. If I bought a more premium brand, maybe $35 or $40. And I've probably got about between $4 and $6 in this. I may not even have that much in it. Just doing quick guesstimation in my head. But as you can see, folks, there you go. Nice uniform seed starting mix. 70% cocoa core, 30% perlite. And now all we need to do is start filling our trays. Well, we got our starting medium mixed up, ready to go. Now we're going to start filling some trays, but I'd like to show you, we've got 2 types of trays available today. I've got some cups, but see if we get you, On the left, the green tray, you can see their larger cells are 16 cells, and on the right, the blue tray, it's got 32 cells, much smaller, and these have their place. I do these a lot of times starting flowers and stuff like that, and honestly, it's a great way. I prefer a little bit bigger of a cell size, so the need to pot them up into something larger later is reduced. So that's what I typically do. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay our tray in our tub filled with our potting medium, and we're just going to fill it up. Now I'm going to show you before we get started. I should have already mentioned it. You want your seed starting medium to be damp and hold its consistency, just like that right there. But you don't want to be able to squeeze no water out of it. So want to make sure that that stuff's still pre-moistened, and that's really all there is to it. Now what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll gently firm it down just a little bit. It's great if you can do this outside. My seed starting bench is actually outside, but we've had so much rough, wet weather. I really don't want to go out there and wade through all that. It's not a bad spot to be, but this one, where we're at right now inside, is a much better spot. And I will mention, while you're filling your trays up, if you feel any clumps, go ahead and get those clumps out, and make your life easier here in just a few minutes. So there we have it. We've got our trays all nice and filled with our seed starting medium. We try to mention this every single time. I'm slightly off camera here. I've got a few things I'm going to start today, and there's a few that I'm going to wait on, and there's a few I'm going to start directly out in the garden. And I'll go ahead and tell you that's my peas. I'm going to get my peas, especially my wife. She wants those sugar snap peas, and that was a good time to go ahead and get those seeds planted out in the garden. But before we get started, we're going to go ahead and make our labels here. And I know my camera, it's going to try to do the autofocus. But if you noticed on there, I've got it labeled. See, this one is a broccoli. And you see right beside the plant variety, I've got a date, 2/5. That's today's date. That's when I'm starting these seeds. And below it is the actual variety of broccoli, the Waltham broccoli. And you want to go ahead and make your labels, so when you start planting, you don't get confused later. And I just like to label them out like this. In this tray right here, we're going to have two kinds of broccoli. We're going to have some, I think it's called green sprouting calabrese, and some Waltham. And then we'll do another tray with about 8 cells of the Desico broccoli. And I'm going to use a smaller size tray. My son's actually sanitizing those now for both of these. It'll be about half the size of this. It'll be little 8 cell trays, but the same size cells. So we'll get these trays filled up. We'll get right back to the video. All right, everybody, we're back. We've got our seeds ready to go. And we're going to start with this green sprouting calabrese broccoli. If you look on your seed packet, it says that the planting depth on these is 1/4 inch. And I noticed on the other two varieties of broccoli, it said that they are needing 1/2 inch. But as long as you're close, that's all that really matters. See, the seed packet closed up on me a little bit. Let me open that thing back up. Give me some seeds in my hand. Now, you can just place your seed in the middle and press it down with your finger and cover it up. That'll work just as good. But just for me, I just go ahead, make a little divot in our seed starting medium. And what you want to do is you always want to try to put 2 seeds in the hole. That way, if one doesn't germinate, better chance that the other one will germinate. And you can always plant that extra plant out in the garden, or you can do what most of us do. It's painful, but you thin them out. You just get your set of scissors and cut the stem off of the one that looks less healthy. So got our seeds in there. We just gently cover them back up. No big deal. And again, I'm going to remind you, don't forget to put your labels in. It's a real important step here. All right, we're going to move on to our Waltham broccoli, which is a variety we have not grown before. And to be truthful, we haven't grown a lot of broccoli. We've grown about, I don't know, maybe 4 plants a year. Just makes my wife happy. And as you know, if you can make your wife happy, it makes you happy. So I try to grow her a little bit of broccoli, and this year I'm going to try to grow her just a little bit extra because she really does like it, and so does a few of my girls. Our last variety is the Desico broccoli. And we've had relatively good success with this, and looking on the seed packet, and these seeds were sold in 2020. So as you can tell, it's 2024, and I still expect they'll do good. But what I am going to do, instead of 2 seeds per hole, I'm going to put in 3. And if we have extra, we have extra. I know some of the neighbors would like some. If you share your starter plants, your extra starter plants, with your neighbors, why don't you let us know in the comment. Let us know the most common thing that you're sharing with them that you grew too much of during the starting season. All right. Now we'll just go back and we'll cover them all up. Last thing we'll do is we'll just take a little spray bottle, give them a little bit extra moisture. This mix is done wet. And all we got to do is just make sure we give them a little bit of extra moisture right there on the top layer so those seeds don't dry out and they germinate properly. And we'll do this on pretty much every seed we start indoors to give us every chance of success we can have. Germinating seeds isn't hard, but it's certainly got to be done right. And if you skimp during this time, your seeds will have a poor germination rate. So one of the things I will recommend is you buy, well, 2 things I'll recommend. Get good quality seeds and make sure that you keep them moist during the germination period. You don't want the soil to be overly moist and soggy. That might rot your seeds. But if you just get your little spray bottle, keep an eye on the moisture level of the soil. Spray them once a day, maybe every other day, depending on your environment, and your seeds will do well. And once we get our seeds good and covered up, we bring them right over here on our seed starting rack, right on top of the germination mat, or you might know it better as a heat mat. And in about 14 days, we'll have us some broccoli sprouts. One of the questions that I see floating around on the internet all the time is, what do you do with all them extra seeds? You know, I've still got lots of seeds left here. Well, seeds last a long time. It's just like I told you with this Desico broccoli. These seeds they were sold 3-4 years ago, and they're still plenty good. We've already got some out in the garden right now that I planted a few months ago that we're about ready to harvest. They germinated just fine. The plants are doing just fine. You just got to store them good. Now, they're not going to last forever, but they will last a good while. So what I do is I just put a little piece of clear tape, fold them over, put a little piece of clear tape, put them right back in my seed storage boxes, and they'll be ready for me again. Now, just in case these don't germinate, I do have some seeds bought this year. It's always a good thing to do that. Keep you some on hand for later. You never know what might come up. You've got seeds. But that's what you can do with your extra seeds. Just fold them up, tape them up, store them up in a good dry place, low heat, and you'll be good to go next year. All right, folks, we got one more thing we're going to start today on camera. A few more things later. I'll do my mint and stuff like that off camera. Don't really have what I need for that for this video, but it's okay. One thing I'll tell you while I'm filling this tray up is if you are going to grow you some mint, do take the advice given on the internet and wherever else you found it about mint. It will take over wherever you plant it. So one of the things I can recommend that you do, if you do want to grow you a little mint, anything in the mint family for that matter, start off growing it in containers. That way you can contain it a lot easier, because mint, it wants to take over wherever it's at. It's just a very vigorous plant. So here we are. We got our tray full, firmed in good, hole in the middle, and we're going to start our celery. And there's a lot of folks, they have a very difficult time with celery. The first time I started celery from seed, I was really excited. Lots of good germination, and then it got the damping off disease. I lost a whole tray. But with the second one, we was a little bit more careful with it, and it did good. Now, celery seeds are a lot smaller. You will have a more difficult time but we do try to get at least 2 in the tray. If we get more, we'll thin it out later. They don't go in very deep at all, very little seeds. And one of the rules that I was taught when we first started was that you want to go 2 times, you want to plant your seeds twice as deep as the plants, as the seeds are big around. So with these, I'm probably going no more than 1/4 of an inch here. And we'll go ahead and put our label in. This is our tall Utah Improved. Did good for us last year. There's a real funny story about that. I waited and waited and waited for that broccoli to develop into big stalk. And I'd go out there every now and again, and boy, that stuff would smell wonderful. I'd get me a little, I'd cut me off a piece every day for lunch. When it come time to harvest it, I harvested it all up. And my wife immediately froze it all. Never saved me 1 stalk. I love her, but that was cruel. That was a cruel thing that summer. But I did get to eat 1 stalk, and it was great. So again, we'll put this on our seed starting mat. We'll clear us out a little space, and I've got just enough room. And if you notice, I'm not putting the watering tray under the mat for the simple reason it reduces the transfer of heat. And we want these to get all the heat that they can. So you can use your watering tray, but just know that you're not going to get as much heat, so your germination time might be a little slower. Well, folks, that's how we get our seeds started. And thank you for sticking around in the video. Because you did, we got a special bonus for you. I'm going to show you how to make an Excel spreadsheet using a simple little formula that will calculate when you start your seeds indoors, when you transplant them, and even when you can expect to get your first harvest. Okay, folks, first thing you want to do is open a new blank workbook in Excel, and you want to fill out this top column here. This will be our header. We're going to type in crop, variety, supplier, SKU, days to germination, days to maturity, mature size, and you can leave this one out. I just put this one in there because I like that column being there. Weeks before transplanting to start outdoors. Column I, when to transplant, then in parentheses, relative to frost date. J1, seed start date, and K1, transplant date. Finally, L1, expected first harvest date. Now what I like to do at this point is I like to click this corner button over here, double click in between, and that opens it up pretty good. So now that's going to be our headers. You can do whatever you want with your headers. You can make them bold, do whatever. But over here in column M, I'm going to merge it with in that merged column, in those merged cells. I'm going to type in last average frost date. Over here in column O, I'm going to enter in my frost date. Now for me, my frost date is April the 19th, somewhere about 2024. And you're going to want to enter it in that format right there. We're going to use that for our calculation. And we're going to click on cell O1, we're going to right click it, we're going to define a name. It's real important. You can name it whatever you want, you better remember it for your formula, but we're just going to say LAFD, last average frost date, and click OK. So now Excel knows we can reference that. Now in order for all of this to work, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find the cells and format these columns so Excel treats them the right way when we need to use it. So you just want to take, say, E2, and we're just going to go, say, 35 here. And I'm going to come up here. I'm going to tell it that it's a number. And I'm going to go to F2. And I could have done this all at one time. But you want to do the same thing here. Make sure that Excel knows it's a number. And then the same thing with H2 and, well, the same with column H and I. We'll just do that all at one time, and those need to be a number. Now, you got these 3 columns here, J, K, and L. Those are dates. So we need to select all of those, and we need to format them as dates. The last thing we want to do is over here in column D, the SKU, we're going to come down here and we're going to make that as text. So for our example here, we're going to freeze this pane, make it easy. So I'm just going to come up here to View, Freeze Panes, freeze the top row. Now when I scroll, that header is going to stay. So to demonstrate how this thing works, help you get it started, our example is going to be the broccoli that we planted today. So of course, in column A, broccoli, the variety is green sprouting calabrese, and the supplier is Seeds of Change. Didn't have a SKU, they didn't list the days to germination on it. I expect it's about 14, but days to maturity was 60. And then in the weeks before transplanting to start indoors, column H, and I just noticed I made a typo in that column, folks, but in column H, row 2, what we're going to do is we're going to use the number -6 for when to transplant -2. And the way that is, I can put these in the garden 2 weeks before my last frost date, and they need to be started 6 weeks prior to that. So now if I go over here to column J here, we're going to enter this formula. Now I'll explain to you this formula here in just a minute. I'm going to go to K2. For whatever reason, it didn't take my formatting. That's exactly why you need to have that formatting, or you're going to get weird errors. Then we're going to go to column L, row 2, and we're going to paste in that formula. And as you can see, I'm supposed to start these the 23rd of February, transplant them in early April, and we harvest at the end of April. You can save this right now, and you just want to call this Garden Schedules Template. Save that right there. And before we make any more changes, we'll go over there. We will save as, go in the same folder, and we'll take out template. And then at the beginning, we'll append 2024 with the underscore. And that way we know that this is this year's starting schedule. And when you start to use this, you don't have to worry about typing all these things in. We've got all our cells formatted. All you have to do is reach over here and highlight these 3 columns, these 3 cells, J2, K2, and L2, and then you just drag them down. However far you want to drag them. You see it's going to put stuff in there. I've got a little sheet in front of me here. We'll do one more. Let's do some lettuce. We'll do the salad bowl variety. Days to germination 10, 50 days to maturity, -5, -3, and there you have it. Everything's pre-calculated for us. And now you can just continue adding your crops with the relevant information. You will have your seed starting date, your transplant date, and your expected first harvest date. Thanks for watching the video. See you on the next one.